What's up guys, this is Ray and welcome to Asian Filmist. And I have another review of a live action adaptation of an anime manga for you guys today, and that movie is BECK. BECK was originally released in 2010 and is directed by Tsutsumi Yukihiko, and it stars a bunch of names whom I absolutely love. Satoh, Takeru, Mizushima, Hiro, Mukai Osamu, Kiritani Kenta, Nakamura Aoi, and of course Kutsuna Shiori, which many of you guys who watch a lot of superhero movies, Hollywood superhero movies, would know from Deadpool 2. But as far as the original anime manga is concerned, I'm a huge fan. I watched all the anime, read all the manga, absolutely loved the story. I went through a phase when I was just absolutely obsessed with not only the story of BECK, but also the music. The music in the original anime, I still enjoy to this day. It introduced me to some bands like the Beat Crusaders, who, you know, I don't listen to much nowadays, but when I was going through my J-pop and J-rock phase, Beat Crusaders was one of the bands I would listen to. So, needless to say, when this came out in the movie theaters here in Japan, I checked it out. I was so hyped to check it out in the theaters. And, you know, at the time, I think when I first watched BECK, I was a bit disappointed because it didn't live up to what I thought the anime and manga to that level. I thought it didn't held up, but I rewatched it again just so I can review it for you guys. And, you know, here are my thoughts. And, you know, the story of BECK, it's about this kid named Koyuki, this high school kid. And he's a soft-spoken dude. But because of his soft-spoken nature, he often gets bullied by his peers. And one day he runs into Ryusuke, who's his rocker. He's his guitarist. And, you know, he kind of takes him in. He gives him a guitar and thanks for saving his dog, who's named BECK. And then their friendship grows, and eventually they form a 5-piece band by the name of BECK. Of course, that's the name of the story, ain't it? And all the while he's playing with BECK, Koyuki develops a romantic relationship with Maho, who is also Ryusuke's sister. So that's the basic story. You know, it has the makings of a good coming-of-age story filled with lots of action-packed music. And so let's dive into the positives. The positives of BECK. First of all, obviously the music. You know, even though the music doesn't live up to the music that was in the original anime, I thought it had its own charm. I thought, you know, especially for movie soundtracks that feature rock and original songs, I thought the music in the live-action movie was exceptionally enjoyable. And I dug the performances of each of the characters in the story. I thought the standout above all was Satoh Takeru. I mean, overall, whenever Satoh Takeru is in a movie, I feel that he always does a good job, and whether it be Rurouni Kenshin or even Aji. You know, the movie itself is lackluster, but, you know, Inuyashiki, fantastic in that movie. So anything with Satoh Takeru, I try to go out of my way to watch, because I know he would always pull out a charming performance for us to enjoy. And not just Satoh Takeru, but pretty much all the actors that were featured in BECK did a fantastic job. They each made different characters. Each character had their own unique personality, their own different quirks, and I felt each actor did a good job at bringing those characters come to life. And each character contrasted with everyone else in the band, leading to some really funny and interesting moments between the two when they're just quarreling, when they're just arguing, or just shooting the shit. And, you know, every scene was entertaining. And I felt that the actors they chose to portray these characters, they look pretty damn close to their anime manga counterparts. You know, I thought the casting was excellent. I think that they couldn't have gone any other way. And overall, I thought the presentation was quite stylish, whether it be just when they showed the bands performing on stage, to even when it tries to become artistic. Like, for example, Koyuki, he starts off as this newbie second guitarist in this band, but eventually he becomes the second vocalist behind Kiritani Kenta's character. Kiritani Kenta brings the kind of hype. He's the hype man of BECK, and he's the rapper as well. So they kind of have this mishmash of rock and rap. But when Koyuki sings, it becomes more of like a traditional rock band, if you will. And Koyuki is supposed to have this voice so heavenly that he makes everyone stop what they're doing and just turn their head and look towards Koyuki. But whenever he sings, I think it's interesting that he makes everyone listening kind of have visions or almost hallucinations. And the way the film portrayed it, you know, it almost looked somewhat artistic in a way. I thought it was interesting the way it was portrayed. But when it comes to the story, you know, the story, it's a bit long. I felt, it was well past the amount of time that I would allow for this type of movie. And that was because the story was a bit messy because they were trying to squeeze as many side plots from the original manga anime as they could. And a lot of these side plots, they often get resolved in some of the, in not the most satisfying ways. And it's like, that they're trying to reference some kind of material in the original story, but because we're only limited to about a 2-hour experience with this movie, there's only so much you can squeeze in. And because of that, we get introduced to a few characters who are more or less just underdeveloped or underused. For example, there was that girl who, in the original story, Saku, the drummer, has a romantic relationship with, but they barely touch on it in the movie, and she just becomes almost just like not a glorified cameo, but more like that she's supposed to represent something. Instead of a romantic relationship, they kind of turn this character into more of just like a representation of of BECK's fans, and I don't think they did a strong enough job with it. That being said, the main characters of BECK, pretty much everyone had a story arc, except for two characters, Taira, the bassist, and Saku, the drummer. I thought, Chiba, Kiritani Kenta's character, went through his own arc when he was trying to discover, what kind of music he really wanted to play. Ryusuke, who's played by Mizushima Hiro, was his arc involved just struggling with his past and trying to run away from it, but at the same time overcome it and improve himself, and also BECK as a whole, try to get everyone to improve their level as musicians. And Koyuki, he's trying to struggle not only with finding himself, because this is a coming of age story, he has to struggle with just even his romantic feelings for Maho, which at the same time they kind of left hanging. They didn't really bring that to a resolution. But all these characters get these cool arcs, but Taira and Saku, they are just kind of left there as as just kind of in the background almost. I mean, when they get introduced quite strongly, but they don't go much beyond that. Also, the acting by any actor who's not Japanese in the story, it was okay. You can definitely feel like they're amateurs, and I don't know what kind of procedure the casting director made to get the guys to portray these non-Japanese characters, but it was okay. But you can definitely tell that they were amateurs, that they weren't pro. They're probably doing it for shits and giggles. But on the topic of non-Japanese actors, or rather, let's move the topic to the English in the story. Ryusuke and Maho are immigrants from, I think in the original story it was America, and they come to Japan. They're kind of struggling with the language as they're trying to go about their daily lives. And they do. There's a lot of fun jabs about growing up in your home country. You're trying to get used to it, but at the same time you don't feel completely part of the country, and that was part of the story arc with Maho, and not so much Ryusuke, but more so Maho, where she's trying to navigate her way despite not being able to read much Japanese. But so that being said, they spend a good amount of time speaking English. I mean, granted, Mizushima Hiro and Kutsuna Shiori, they're bilingual, and that's fantastic. I think speaking a second language is great. Especially, I think it's especially cute that Kutsuna Shiori, she's originally from Australia, and while she tries to speak with an American accent, you can definitely hear the Australian accent, the Aussie accent come out, and it's obvious there. And I think it's cute. I love Kutsuna Shiori, especially in the works that she's done after she did BECK. But when it comes to Mizushima Hiro's performance speaking English, I thought it was very unnatural. And, I don't know if it's because he's acting in a language that he doesn't use much nowadays, or much, at least at the time, or that he's acting in a second language. I don't know, like, the way he delivered his lines, it was the most unnatural thing and most cringeworthy thing to witness on screen. I'm sorry, it's just, I don't know, I just can't help but feel that way. And at the same time, as awesome as it is for Mizushima Hiro to be bilingual, he has this really annoying lisp that I just can't unhear. And Ryusuke is supposed to be this badass, this cool character that the whole band follows. He's the band leader. But I don't know. I can't follow a leader that sounds funny when he's speaking unnaturally with a lisp. I don't know. That's just me personally. And lastly, the last negative I have to say is, while I said that the music was enjoyable, I have qualms about the way they portrayed Koyuki singing. I mentioned earlier that Koyuki supposedly has a voice so angelic that he turns heads. However, the way it was portrayed in this movie, it was almost like a cop out. They mute his voice, and instead you hear the instruments playing. But at the same time, they play this kind of symphonic music to kind of be a stand-in for his voice. And I felt like, it's one of those things in a story when you introduce something and you kind of keep it a secret for the majority of the story in the beginning when you introduce it, you're supposed to reveal it later on, but in Beck in this movie they don't reveal it, so they kind of broke that rule, and just the way it all was, like, I don't know, it just felt like a huge cop out. I tried to, I can see what the director was thinking about, what he was going with this idea, and I think it was interesting. But as someone who wants to hear music in this film, I felt like you were only hearing half of what is being shown in front of you, and yeah, that's just a huge cop out. But overall, what did I think of Beck? I'm not as disappointed as when I first watched it years ago. Granted, I don't think it has the same level of charm as the original anime manga. And I found new things to appreciate about the movie this time around. And overall, nowadays, I just find it, it's decent. It's fine. If you can get over Mizushima Hiro's lisp, Koyuki's muted singing, then I think you can have a good time. I think fans of the original anime manga will once they can get over those kinds of things, can have a lot of fun with this movie, especially with the way they try to capture everything so perfectly, as from the character designs to the way just the story flowed. But at the same time, as much as I like the music that was featured in this movie, I do miss the English songs that were featured in the anime soundtrack. I mean, with lyrics like "I was fool, could have let myself to go," those English lyrics stick with me to this day. I don't think I can ever get over those lyrics. I love them. They had a lot of charm. The music here in the movie was okay, but I still love the music of the anime. But that aside, if you haven't seen the original anime manga, I think there are still things to enjoy with this live action movie of Beck. And so, yes, those are my thoughts on Beck. What did you guys think, or what kind of questions you guys have? Let me know in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And by all means, please support Asian Filmist on Patreon. It really helps the channel a lot. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you all again in the next video. Take it easy.